The United States has announced that it has secured separate agreements with Ukraine and Russia to ensure safe navigation in the Black Sea and to halt attacks on each other's energy infrastructure. The agreements, if implemented, would mark a significant step toward a wider ceasefire and could pave the way for future peace talks aimed at ending the war that began with Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the truce on both maritime activity and energy infrastructure was effective immediately. He also warned that if Russia violates the agreements, he would request more weapons and sanctions from US President Donald Trump. Meanwhile, Ukrainian Defense Minister Rustem Umerov confirmed that Kiev had signed on to the partial ceasefires. However, he stressed that any movement of Russian military vessels outside the eastern part of the Black Sea would be treated as a threat and would justify self-defense. Russia's response came with conditions. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stated that Moscow would only sign the Black Sea deal if it came with a direct order from Washington to Kiev. Lavrov said past agreements with Ukraine had failed and only instructions from the US could ensure compliance from the Zelensky administration. It remains unclear whether Russia's demand for US-backed guarantees could derail the implementation of the deal. Zelensky, for his part, has said that Russian President Vladimir Putin cannot be trusted. The US initially proposed a 30-day full ceasefire, which Ukraine accepted in principle earlier this month. But after Putin responded with a list of conditions, the US opted for smaller, more targeted agreements. This week's negotiations in Saudi Arabia focused on those limited ceasefires. Ukrainian and US officials are expected to meet again in Riyadh to follow up on the discussions. The Black Sea ceasefire effectively replaces the previous grain export deal, which allowed Ukraine to ship nearly 33 million metric tons of grain safely. That agreement collapsed in 2023 after Russia withdrew, citing issues with its own agricultural exports under Western sanctions. Lavrov emphasized that predictability was essential for grain and fertilizer markets. He reiterated Russia's mistrust of Zelensky, echoing the Ukrainian leader's own criticism of Putin. Meanwhile, President Trump continues to push for a swift end to the war, a key promise from his election campaign. He has also signaled interest in building broader cooperation with Russia across sectors like energy, sport, and even space exploration. But Ukraine and its allies in Europe remain cautious, fearing that any quick deal may compromise Ukraine's sovereignty or require Kiev to surrender contested territory and its NATO ambitions, conditions Ukraine has rejected. For now, both Washington and Moscow are reviewing the outcomes of the latest talks, but neither side has shared specific details with the public.